Welcome to this explainer. You know, we walk around every single day completely unaware of the absolute cinematic symphony of microscopic processes happening inside of us right this very second. Most of the time, we just don't think about the mechanical perfection required to keep us breathing, thinking, and simply existing. Well, today we're going to change that. We're taking a deep dive into the true architecture of our own survival.
To do this, we'll be exploring the 4 fundamental biological engines that run non-stop 24/7 to keep you alive. We're looking at nutrition, respiration, transportation, and finally, excretion.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, nutrition, which is all about how we fuel these complex biological systems.
Obviously, without fuel, the entire engine just stops. But there's a really fascinating divide in how life actually obtains this energy. On one side, you've got autotrophs, like green plants, right? They essentially perform magic. They synthesize their own food from inorganic sources using carbon dioxide, water, light, and chlorophyll. On the other side, you have heterotrophs. That includes amoebas and, well, us humans. We can't just absorb sunlight for a quick lunch, so we have to derive our food ready-made by consuming other living things. We are basically organic scavengers.
And in humans, this scavenging journey is incredibly complex. It involves 5 perfectly synchronized steps. It kicks off with ingestion in your mouth, where saliva, which is packed with an enzyme called salivary amylase, gets right to work breaking down carbs. Then the food heads down into your J-shaped stomach, and digestion gets serious. Gastric juices loaded with hydrochloric acid and pepsin just shred those proteins apart. Next up is absorption, in the small intestine, where tiny, finger-like projections called villi massively increase the surface area to soak up all those vital nutrients. Then comes assimilation, where your body actually puts those goods to use. And finally, egestion, the swift removal of whatever we just couldn't break down.
So we've successfully ingested, digested, and absorbed all these nutrients. The fuel is in the system. But that begs a pretty crucial question. How do our cells actually unlock the energy trapped inside that food? Having fuel is completely useless if you don't know how to ignite it.
And that brings us to part 2, respiration, which is how we actually unlock that cellular energy.
See, respiration isn't just about breathing in and out. At a cellular level, it's this catabolic process where we oxidize nutrients inside our mitochondria to release energy. And a single glucose molecule can actually take a few different pathways to get there. If there's plenty of oxygen around, your body uses the aerobic pathway, which is highly efficient and leaves us with CO2, water, and energy. Now, in the complete absence of oxygen, like in yeast, the anaerobic pathway creates ethanol and CO2. But look at that bottom scenario. When you're doing heavy, vigorous exercise and your body suddenly lacks enough oxygen, it switches to a muscular anaerobic pathway. This produces lactic acid, which deposits right in your tissue. That is exactly why your muscles burn when you work out hard.
But regardless of the pathway, the ultimate goal of all this cellular oxidation is to produce ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. You can really just think of ATP as the ultimate energy currency of your body. It's minted when adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, combines with a phosphate molecule. Every single time your heart beats or a neuron fires in your brain, you are actively spending this ATP currency.
Of course, to run that highly efficient aerobic respiration that funds all this ATP, we need a constant, massive supply of oxygen. Enter our respiratory system. It's an unbelievable ventilation network. Air is pulled through your nostrils, where tiny hairs and mucus filter out the dust and regulate the temperature. Then it rushes down the trachea, your windpipe, which, by the way, is cleverly guarded by a flap called the glottis so you don't accidentally inhale your food. From there, it branches into the bronchi, then into the smaller bronchioles, until it hits the real magic, microscopic balloon-like air sacs called alveoli, where the vital exchange of gases with your blood finally happens.
But the physical act of getting air all the way down into those alveoli is driven by simple, elegant physics. Try it right now. Take a deep breath in. During inhalation, your diaphragm and intercostal muscles expand your chest cavity. That increases the thoracic volume, which drops the pressure. And boom, it creates a vacuum that pulls oxygen-rich air straight in. Now let it out. During exhalation, the cavity shrinks, the volume decreases, pressure spikes, and that carbon dioxide waste is forcefully pushed out. You are quite literally a living, breathing biological bellows.
Okay, so we've got the fuel in the gut, and we're actively pulling oxygen into the lungs. But we still have a major logistical problem here. How do these 2 vital elements, hanging out in totally different parts of your body, actually cross paths so they can power your cells?
That leads us directly to Part 3, transportation, your body's circulatory highway.
To connect these systems, we rely on a high-speed superhighway linking every single cell you have. And the main transport vehicle on this highway is blood. Blood is a fascinating fluid connective tissue. It's made of a watery, protein-rich liquid called plasma. Floating right in that plasma are your red blood cells, which are packed with a pigment called hemoglobin that grabs onto oxygen. You've also got colorless white blood cells acting as your immune defense system, and platelets, these tiny cells constantly on standby to clot up any leaks or cuts in the highway.
Let's see how this all connects in the heart. The heart is the relentless pump driving this entire highway, and it uses a brilliant system called double circulation. First, deoxygenated carbon dioxide heavy blood arrives at the right atrium and ventricle. It's then pumped out through the pulmonary artery straight to the lungs for purification. Once it's loaded with fresh oxygen, it loops back to the left atrium and ventricle. Then, the thick muscular walls of your left ventricle blast this newly oxygenated blood out through your body's largest artery, the aorta, feeding every single cell you have.
But wait, as all this oxygen and nutrient goodness is delivered by the blood and feverishly consumed across your body, toxic metabolic waste is inevitably left behind, which leads us to our final and perhaps most underappreciated biological problem. How do we clean up all the trash so it doesn't kill us?
Welcome to Part 4, excretion, the body's built-in filtration system.
This vital cleanup operation starts two bean-shaped organs in your lower back, your kidneys. You can really just think of them as massive, highly complex water treatment plants. But the actual heavy lifting is done deep inside by millions of microscopic filtration units called nephrons. Honestly, these nephrons are the absolute unsung heroes of our bodies, filtering our blood drop by single drop.
Let's trace the journey through one of these microscopic wonders. High-pressure blood enters a tight knot of vessels called the glomerulus, which sits right inside a cup-shaped structure called Bowman's capsule. Fluid gets forced out of the blood and into the capsule. Then, as this fluid winds quickly through a crazy tubular maze, past the proximal convoluted tubule, down the loop of Henle, and up the distal convoluted tubule, your body performs this delicate, rapid-fire balancing act. It carefully reabsorbs all the useful things it accidentally filtered out, like water and carbs. What's left at the very end in the collecting duct is solely the toxic yellow waste, urine, which gets safely funneled down to the bladder.
So the huge takeaway from this explainer today is just the absolute marvel of your own biology. I want you to visualize it for a second. Right now, as you sit there, your digestive tract is extracting fuel. Your respiratory bellows are pulling in oxygen. Your circulatory superhighway is distributing it at lightning speed via a double pumping heart. And millions of microscopic renal filters are quietly scrubbing out the toxins. It is a flawless, deeply interdependent dance happening every single second of your life.
And that leaves us with a rather profound question to end on. Considering the intricate, staggering perfection required just to keep us functioning, to keep the glucose burning, the blood flowing, and the toxins clearing, are we just a complex collection of biological pumps and filters? Or is there a greater magic in how perfectly they orchestrate our survival, day in and day out, without us ever even having to think about it? It's definitely something to ponder the next time you simply take a breath.